So what happens when you combine two popular blasters? One, the Dart Zone Pro Mark 2.1, and two, the Dart Zone Max Venom Pro. And the answer to that is the Adventure Force Brute Pro. Now, before we get started on this review, thank you to Dart Zone for sending out a sample of the Brute Pro so that we could get an early look at this brand new blaster. So when you get the box of the Brute Pro, you can see everything that you get in the box, for the most part. You get eye protection, you get darts, you get a scar barrel, you get the blaster itself, and you get 2 magazines. Now, the magazines fit in the grip of the handle, which makes it very comfortable, it makes it very convenient to hold. And immediately, before I even opened it, I clocked that it could possibly be using the very same magazine as the Adventure Force, no, the Dart Zone Venom Pro. And when I got it out of the box, wouldn't you know, that was the case. This is a 6-round mag that, for people in the Nerf hobby, this is called a Nightingale magazine, and the reason for that is because it is a slim profile that is angled so that it makes loading these into pistol or smaller blasters a lot easier, a lot more comfortable to hold. Now, this is where we start to get our comparisons, because the Dart Zone Pro Mark 2.1 was one of the first mag in grip blasters that they used, that while it wasn't using the Nightingale geometry for the magazines, that didn't exist at the time, it was a similar concept because it was a slimmer profile, much easier to hold than other blasters at the time that had these really chunky grips. Removing the scar barrel for now, if you look at these two blasters side by side, you can see that there are a lot of similarities. Now, the Brute Pro is going to be a slimmer blaster just by nature of the magazines it uses, and also just the overall design. There's just not as much plastic as there is on the Dart Zone Pro Mark 2.1. But they are roughly the same length, they are roughly the same width. Very similar between these two. There are quite a few differences though. But without going too far into the comparisons, the pros and cons, what I will say is picking up this blaster is extremely comfortable. When you first load the magazine in the blaster, it does seat really well. You don't get a sense that this is going to fall out and drop on you. The downside of that though is that the mag release here, it's very similar to the Venom Pro, this one right here, but you can feel that there is like a little tactile difference. So the Venom Pro magazine release sticks out from the blaster just a little bit. It gives you a sense that the magazine will drop once you click it in, whereas the Brute Pro has it a little more flush. So you're pushing in a little harder before the magazine will sometimes gravity drop. But let's get some early impressions of it here. I have a magazine of 6 loaded up. We will put it in here and we're going to prime it back. First thing you'll notice is that when you look right here, typically blasters like this, you will see an opening. This is to clear jams. This is to get access to the internals of the blaster if you need to. Don't necessarily get that option here. So we're going to prime this forward. And you have to hear it click forward because you're not going to get stopped by the priming handle in the back. Again, something that the Dart Zone Pro Mark 2.1 has done. You're going to have to make sure that you're not palming it from the back. You're going to have to slide it all the way forward, hear that click, and now we're going to fire some darts. And there we go. We start to fire darts. Couple things that you'll notice, that the travel on the trigger is quite a bit farther than you might be expecting. So you're going to be squeezing the trigger quite a far amount before the darts start flying. Let's see if I can't back up a little more and get another dart. Oh, that was interesting. Huh. I'll have to listen to this on the second try though. So here we go. Something that I wanted to note is that when I prime this back, I'm going to hold it up to my microphone here and see if you can hear what I hear. There's like a real squeaky sound. I'm wondering if this isn't lubricated properly because when the spring compresses, it shouldn't really be sounding that way. Without opening it up, I'm kind of at a loss for what to do with that, so let's see. There is a lot of power behind this. When you do click the trigger all the way back, the darts feel really good. I'm going to switch over to the Dart Zone Pro Mark 2.1. I most recently used that at Jared's Epic Blaster Battle 10, but I just kind of want to get a comparison between these two because, again, a lot of similarities just on feel here. Now, when I did get back from Jared's Epic Blaster Battle, the Brute Pro was in my mailbox, so it was kind of fun to have experience with this, because I did bring this with me, and then immediately move to the Brute Pro. So we're going to see if we hear that same squeak. No, it's a lot quieter of a slide, and here you can see the open door that loads the darts. Push it forward, and we're going to fire this off. Huh. performance-wise, without going into any sort of numbers, metrics, or anything like that, feel very similar. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to fire them one after the other. So I've got one more dart in this. I've got quite a few darts in this. Yeah, that's a squeaky blaster. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fire this one, and then I'm going to fire this one. All right, here we go. This is a tight little blaster. Squeaks aside, it feels good in your hand. It does hold very nicely. I think using the Nightingale geometry for the magazine in the grip of the blaster works wonders. Now, if you're curious whether or not you can use... Oh, wow, things are falling over there. If you're wondering or not whether this can use the Venom Pro magazine, well, let's just see that. So we're going to remove this magazine here, take the darts from it, put it into the Venom Pro magazine, and we'll use the Brute Pro with the Venom Mag. Okay. It doesn't feel as seated. I'm guessing that's why the magazines in this are a little recessed, so that it grips a little better in there. It doesn't feel like this protrudes the mag release any different, but now, oh, that's squeaky. I'm really starting to notice that now. So here we go, and we're going to fire this one. Well, it hit one of my tripods, and it hit me right back. I mean, the dart flew, as you can tell, so let's get the last one out of here. What the heck? The trigger feels a little inconsistent. So I think what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to play around with this a little more. I'm going to have to see what exactly is going on here, because squeakiness feels good, power's there, but the trigger seems to be a point of contention for me. So I'm going to have to put a lot more darts through this thing and get an idea of what that is. And good thing that I have my Nightingale magazine, so we can just keep loading darts and getting these through. So, all right, we're going to have to go to the next clip. All right, now I've put a ton of darts through this thing. Couple thoughts. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to launch into what I like about this blaster, what I don't like, what I would have changed. Now, what I like about this blaster is that it's adopting, I would say, Nerf community standards. One, the Nightingale magazine is a great dart magazine type. It is very slim, it's very compact, it works reliably, and it's interoperable with just many other blasters. Compatibility, when we're talking about foam dart blasters, is always a great thing. More compatibility, the better, because then it comes down to what dart blaster company is making the best stuff. The other thing that I like about this offering is that it offers a lot of stuff. You get enough darts to fill up both of your magazines, so you get 2 magazines, which is great. You get eye protection, which when we're using pro performance blasters is usually a must. And you get one of these injection molded scar barrels that work across, again, a lot of other blasters. For the Brute Pro, it fits at the end of the barrel, rather loosely, but if you have a barrel with a slightly larger diameter, you can put it the other way too. So compatibility, awesome, great thing. Couple things I would have changed. As you just saw, this is a loose fit. It's not going to fall out on me, but it only takes just a tiny little pull before it comes loose. To have this be just a tiny little more snug around the scar barrel would just make it feel a little more secure. The other thing that I would have changed about this is have dart access. The reason for it is this. Throughout my testing of this blaster, it jammed. And I don't know exactly why that happened, but I would travel the trigger all the way back and the dart wouldn't fire. I'm not sure if there is a problem with the catch, if there's some internal locking mechanisms that prevent that from happening. Unclear. I could not prime this back. There was no deprime button, and I had no access door to get at the dart, because when the dart blaster is in its fully forward prime position, everything is sealed. Now, how did I get it unjammed? First, I tried getting it using one of those tiny little claws to pull it out of the thing. That didn't work, so I just had to whack it a bunch, and eventually the trigger worked. Now, what don't I like about the Brute Pro? The biggest thing that I don't like about the Brute Pro is how far the trigger has to travel for the dart to fly. Because we are using heavier spring loads, because this is a 14+ blaster, a pro blaster category Brute Pro, it does take a considerable amount of strength to do that. Now, for me, that's not usually an issue, but over repeated use and traveling your finger as far back as it has to go, it does tire your trigger finger out a little bit. Now holding this up against the Dart Zone Pro Mark 2.1, you can see just how far back you have to go. In terms of firing, this older blaster is more comfortable than the Brute Pro. And this is a slightly better designed blaster because I like this extra little detail that's printed on. And this does have a Picatinny on top and bottom, where the Mark 2.1 doesn't have all that. Now the other thing that I don't like about this blaster is how the priming slide works. Because this is inset from the rest of the blaster, you can't use your palm to press it forward. So it's not a back and then slam forward. Now that's not a bad thing. Some people might actually like that, but for me personally, I prefer when it's a lot more easy to kind of slam it forward and have a dart ready to go. There's no ambiguity on how far forward you can press it at that point, whereas this, you have to listen audibly for a click forward so that the dart can, in theory, fire, but like I did through my testing, it can jam, even if you are pressing the trigger as far back as it needs to go. So I'm a little conflicted with this blaster. I like the way it looks. I like all that you get in the package because, as we are seeing with toys across the board, blasters, collectibles, action figures, all that kind of stuff, we're seeing less and less in the boxes to compete on pricing because pricing on everything is going up, in case you haven't wandered the toy aisles at Target, Walmart, or even browsed on Amazon lately. So value-wise with stuff, the Brute Pro is a really good value, especially in a 2025 world. And doubly especially in a year where blaster releases have slowed down considerably. Now, a couple years ago, this blaster would have been a slam dunk. The issue, though, is that competition in the blaster aisle is going up. We have X-Shot doing pro blasters. We have Nerf taking swipes at pro blasters. Dart Zone, as entrenched as they have been for a long time with the Adventure Force Pro series and their Dart Zone Max line, they are starting to feel the pressure of competition. Now, the Brute Pro is coming in at about $25, or at least that's the MSRP of this blaster. It could be a little more when it finally hits store shelves. Another blaster from Dart Zone, this, when it released, it was about $50. Comparing the two, they're very obviously different. This one is a flywheel-based blaster. This one is a spring-powered blaster. But only one of these in my hand gave me a ton of smiles when I was using it. It was this older one. But it's serviceable, it's fine, there are great points to it. However, it's still just not one of my favorites in the Adventure Force line. So those are my overall thoughts on the Adventure Force Brute Pro. This review didn't necessarily go the way that I thought it was going to. I think it shows well, it looks great, but when you're using this blaster for a prolonged period of time or putting it through its paces, you'll start to get worn out a little bit. And if you like this discussion on blasters, well, I talk a lot about blasters, but I also talk a lot about pop culture, collectibles, action figures, anything action related. You can stay tuned here on the Ri-Fi channel. And that way, you can get more videos exactly like this one, because if you got to this point in the video, I can only assume you like those cool things too. So that's all I know about the Adventure Force Brute Pro. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.